they're in their early to mid 30s and are at a crossroads with each other. Because in these kinds of situations, you're the victim of something, but you have to spend the rest of your life figuring out how to overcome it. And when I started to delve into that, then it became more about a marriage, and I made the decision to make the driver a woman. And that led me to these two characters in a completely different play that I'd been trying to write and struggling with and not being able to find a way. And so I just took Joe and Sarah from that piece and planted them into this piece, and then those two people started to have a real life, because they were not moving forward in the other story, which is fascinating. They're dealing with the loss of something, and they're trying to start a family, and they're not having success with that. It's causing distance in their marriage, which now that I'm in my 30s and trying to have a family, I'm acutely aware of how common a story that is, and how terrifying that whole process can be, and really how challenging it is on a marriage, whether you're successful at having kids or not. The whole process. Even talking to my sister a little while ago, who's had a baby, and she was talking about how relationships are challenged by the child, and a relationship that potentially has problems, you start to transfer, and this is her perspective, but transfer all the love that you had onto your kid, and so that the relationship itself loses something. And I think the same thing can happen on the other side. Like, we think about it as more detrimental when you lose a baby, or you have miscarriages, or you can't have kids, that puts a kind of pressure on the relationship. But you can have just as much pressure on the relationship even when you're successful having a baby. Just the whole idea of trying to have a baby and have a family is difficult, and difficult for couples to navigate. And so that, I think, is like the crux of their relationship, is like, how do we continue to love each other, but how do we each grow? And we also put a lot of pressure on our identity and its definition being associated with what it is that we do and how important our jobs are. And when something happens that prevents you from being able to do your job, then it really questions, or puts into question, like, who you are. And for me, the two of them are struggling with that. Joe is struggling with who he is and what his role is and what his purpose is, because the job that he has takes him away from his family. And so in order to be home, he can't necessarily do his job, but his job grounds him in who he is. But then he's not successful at starting a family, so his manhood and his paternal instincts and husband strokes of whatever kind are being challenged and squashed a little bit. And the same is for her. Like, she has this option of being a mother or being the TTC conductor, and neither one is working. And so they're trapped in this sort of non-identity, trying to figure out how to navigate that. And it's very hard to be with another person when you're not confident in who you are. And it's even harder when you've been with that person for a really long time in a very specific context, and they know who you are based on who they are and where you're both at and what you're doing. And when both those, like, when all of that is challenged, then neither one of you knows who you are and neither one of you knows where you're at. And so you don't know you can't even reflect yourself off the other person, because the other person can't do that for you. So I think they're in a real state of crisis as individuals, and therefore within their marriage. And that that's something that scares the crap out of me, but of interest.